Mike Huckabee is a US presidential candidate who did an interview about his views on gay marriage now. As you may or may not know, a couple of years back, the US um, passed a gay marriage law, but the way they did it was their constitutional court decided that gay marriage should be legal but because it is a valid interpretation of the law that it should be legal. So they didn't actually pass any new laws, they just decided that it was already stated in their constitution. And now this is going to be a little long and really ridiculous, and it might hurt your brain to watch it, but sure, just skip ahead. But I'm going to show this to you, and then I'm going to give you my opinion. So brace for impact.
Has the power of the purse, the executive branch has the power of the sword, the judicial branch has neither. And it depends upon the goodwill of the other two branches and their assent to that in order for it to be operative. And
so for an anti-constitutional decision, an illegitimate decision such as the Obergefell decision,
Yes.
which, as the dissenters pointed out, the four dissenting justices, just
Brilliantly,
has
by the
no
way.
basis in
Yeah.
the text or logic or structure or historical understanding of the Constitution. For a decision like that, would you as president simply decline to enforce that
I
decision?
would absolutely decline. In fact, I would make sure that I had an attorney general who led the Justice Department who would protect in every way the rights of those citizens who joined in disagreeing. I just find it amazing that we would ever surrender not just the executive and legislative branches, but we essentially would surrender the entire government of the United States to what John Roberts so brilliantly labeled 5 unelected lawyers. You know, there are times I've disagreed with John Roberts, maybe on the Obamacare decision.
Sure.
But my gosh, when I read his dissent on the same-sex marriage decision, it was one of the most powerful, riveting, and revealing dissents, I think, perhaps ever. And for a Chief Justice to refer repeatedly to his colleagues on the Supreme Court, and a good friend of mine, a constitutional scholar, Matt Staver, who was dean of the law school at Liberty University for many years, made the comment, he said, that in all of the history of the Supreme Court, never has a Chief Justice repeatedly referred to his colleagues as 5 unelected lawyers. He would at least refer to them with the respectful delineation of my esteemed colleagues or my fellow justices, some way of, he showed them contempt, not respect, by always referring to them over and over as 5 unelected lawyers. And he and Scalia, Alito and Thomas all made it very clear that this decision was outside the bounds of the Constitution and law, outside the boundaries of their authority, because there was nothing in the Constitution that they could hang their hat on and say, we have the right to define marriage. And it's a matter of saving our republic to say that as president, we're not going to accept this decision. We will ignore it. We will not enforce it. And in fact, if a state has same-sex marriage by the vote of its people, then we will respect it because we
that's
have to.
that they have the constitutional authority.
They
The
have
states
the
have the
constitutional
constitutional
authority to
authority.
do
They
that.
could introduce polygamy. Right?
They could.
And that would be perfectly within their constitutional
I wouldn't like
authority.
it, but I would
like
have
it?
to respect
No.
it. Under the 10th Amendment, you'd have to say they were within their bounds.
But this has to be a matter of principle, doesn't it? So that
Yes.
for our liberal friends, they have some decisions they don't like as well. The gun control decisions that have defended our Second Amendment in a robust interpretation of the right to bear arms. Citizens United, the campaign finance case. If, let's say, President Obama, who believes that the campaign finance case is wrong, that it's not rooted in the Constitution, that it's an illegitimate decision, if he refused to enforce it, we would have to say that's within his authority as well. We might disagree with him on the substance of the decision, but if we're not to be hypocrites here, don't we have to say that if he made that choice, then of course it would be up to the American people to respond politically as to whether they thought he was doing the right thing in standing up to the court or not. But we couldn't criticize him for lawlessness, could we?
Well, no, but here's what we could do. I mean, this is the genius of our Constitution, and every now and then I just stand back in awe. I really do. I mean, I believe the Bible is divinely inspired, and I don't think the Constitution's on the same level as the Scriptures. But I can't read the Constitution, particularly as I understand it in context of how it is played out, and not be in awe of the sheer brilliance that our founders understood that we are frail. Now, we would say it in the maybe the biblical tradition, we're sinners. I know that's politically incorrect, but that we have a basic nature that is not perfect.
G.K. Chesterton said that original sin is the only Christian doctrine for which there is empirical evidence that's overwhelming.
Well, there is definitely evidence of that. But because we understood that we're frail, that we would make mistakes, that we were corruptible, we created 3 branches so that if one got out of control, the other 2 had the power to check it.
It's the system of checks and balances.
That's exactly right. So that's why it's so important that the president not surrender to the courts. It's also important that the Congress and the courts not surrender to the president. So if the president is out of control, Congress has the power to impeach. The Congress has the power
to deny funding.
To deny funding
to certain institutions.
Absolutely, they have the power of the purse to withhold.
For example, defunding Planned Parenthood is something Congress is working on.
That's exactly right. It's messy. It's not always pretty.
But it's politics. Yeah, it's the system.
The system is designed for self-correction, but it has to be led by people who swim in their lane, understand the unique constitutional duty, and I use that word with emphasis, the constitutional duty they have to provide that check and balance to the other branches. If they fail to do that, then we begin to unravel the very foundation of our constitutional republic.
Right, well, there is so much I want to say about that clip, but before I do, allow me to show you a picture, a painting, of 5 unelected lawyers from the US. That's right. The people who built your country, who wrote your constitution, were lawyers. But maybe that's not as witty a point as I might think, and you can point it out, and that's fine. So let's get to some other parts of that, okay? Shall we? Okay, so this is why no one, well, not no one, but why most people don't take US politics that seriously. And look, there are other factors to that. Partially things like Donald Trump and Ben Carson leading in the Republican polls, complete, well, let's leave it at that. But the other part is this. You have a politician who is running to get elected the president of the US, and he believes that the Bible is more important than the Constitution. Well, if God beats law, if he's better than the system, then why the fuck are you running to get into the system? Now, you have to keep a bit of a distance with Mike Huckabee because he is a preacher originally, but look, he's obviously not going to win, but he's not doing that bad in the polls, to be honest, and look, it's just disheartening to see people follow a guy who believes that a 2,000-year-old book is a basis for a system of government. And another thing that fascinates me is, he's acting like their court went rogue, like it started passing laws and changing their constitution, but in fact all their constitutional court, well, they call it the Supreme Court, all their Supreme Court did was do its job and determine the Constitution. And what's his reaction to that? No, I changed that, because, you see, our Constitution is so great, it tells us exactly how to govern, and that is why I want to change it. Yes, and I'm totally not contradicting myself, just take my word on this. Oh, and support our troops, I believe in the Bible, thank you, yeah, Mike Huckabee 2016. That's how ridiculous he is. And now, maybe I'm being biased, but I mean, really? You're running to lead a country that has so many economic problems, that doesn't have good education standards, good healthcare standards, that has a massive low-income problem, a giant class of working poor. And what do you want to solve? Not the war on drugs, not the fact that people live into their 50s with a student loan debt. No, you want to change the fact that people who you don't like, because of some bullshit you were fed when you were young, can get married. Well, too fucking bad.